Good evening and salutations, my GH fans. I'm gonna be honest, this episode didn't really do much for me. Um, I liked a couple of scenes in this episode. One was the Jocelyn versus Esme scene because one, you really find out that Spencer has no backbone whatsoever. Um, Pretty much just lets Esme dictate him and tell him what to do, where to do, and just where to go. This is after, Jocelyn and Esme go at it, and, Esme turns around and looks at Spencer like, are you gonna let her say that to me? And I'm like, bro, you clearly can't sit there and see what kind of woman you're dealing with. This is after Esme, I guess, like leaves for a little bit. And even when Esme was there, Jocelyn was like, "Yo, listen, this is who you're dealing with. You seriously can't sit there and see this woman for who she is, for what she just did to Trina. You cool with that?" Now Esme, again, she leaves for a little bit, and Spencer looks at Cam is like, "Well, what do you sit there and think?" Like, what do you sit there and think, Cam? Do you think that she was meant to trying to hurt Trina and embarrass her and stuff like that? And I'm like, bro, you were in the room the whole time. First of all, why are you asking his opinion on if Esme set out to try to hurt Trina? Like, you couldn't see that for yourself. You needed him to sit there and tell you that. And even after, he still doesn't sit there and call her out. Esme is like, all right, let's go. And like the spineless bastard that he is, he walks out. Now, they're in the car, and, Spencer asks, Esme, did you really sit there and try to, hurt Trina like that and embarrass her and stuff? And I'm sitting there thinking, bro, what if she said yes? What are you going to do then? You're not going to do anything. You didn't do anything at the cabin. You didn't sit there and do anything, sit there and try to defend her then. Um, this woman is literally sitting there blowing your relationship with your friends, and you're just like, nah, that's cool. Anyway, later on throughout the episode, for some odd reason, Cam and Jocelyn thought it was a good idea to have sex because, um, first they said, well, I think one of them was sitting there saying, well, we practically got the cabin to ourselves. There you go. There's somebody else in the other room that's sitting there bawling out her eyes. That didn't spoil the move for anyone? No? Okay, cool. That totally makes sense. And that's what they do. Now, Esme did leave a camera to sit there and record them doing it. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, what if they actually, like, what if their move got spoiled and you decide to not do that and actually be good friends and try to look out for Trina? Like, what if that happened? This is one of those things where it's like I know that this is the whole tape or whatever is going to come in handy later on down the line, but this is one of those plot things because it's like she had no way of knowing for sure if they were actually going to sit there and have sex or if they didn't sit there and somehow find a damn camera. But we're just going to go with plot because that makes sense. Yep, that's what we're dealing with. I'm going to be honest, the scenes between Epiphany and Temporary Marshall didn't really go anywhere. Only thing about this conversation was Marcia wanted to make sure that she followed her dreams to sit there and be a doctor. The only reason why she once again stopped was because she had a conversation. Well, she said that after having a conversation with the doctor, she kind of realized that, maybe she's just better suited for being a nurse or something. I'm like, no, that wasn't it. You were unprofessional with the doctor. You practically walked up to him and told him that he wasn't doing his job correctly, and this is how you should do it. So that wasn't a reason to sit there and stop being your doctor. That might have been a reason to stop sitting there trying to tell other people how to handle their job or how to do their job. But no. Um. Anyway, Marshall talks about his kids, or well, sorry. getting close with TJ and Curtis, and then he leaves. And I'm not gonna lie, it was really funny because Epiphany was like, "Well, I'm about to sit there and leave. I'm pretty much done with my break," and she's about to just leave. And then they sit down, and they talk even longer, and I'm like, "Epiphany, how long is your break?" Um, I think temporary Marshall did an okay job. I know Marshall is supposed to be an older character, but the guy that they had playing Marshall was like senior citizen level old. So I just found that to be a little odd, but whatever. He's going to be back on Monday or Tuesday whenever the show comes back on. So what else? Martin decides to not be not decide decides not to represent Laura after Laura was sent there trying to practically talk some sense into him. She did question why he was actually going to sit there and represent Martin. I mean, why Martin was going to sit there and represent Peter. And more or less, it just came down to money. But I guess he really needed to ask himself a question. Was money more important than the safety of that child? Because if he does his job well and Peter's free, what do you think he's going to sit there and do first? So, with that being said, Peter goes to, I mean, Martin goes to Peter and practically tells him that, he can't sit there and represent him anymore. And Peter's like, oh, okay. And I'm not going to lie. I was like, wait, really? Even Martin was like, yo, we good? No hard feelings? Like, you're not upset? And he says no. And to be honest, what is he going to sit there and do? Kill him? Hurt him? I mean, he already has a mountain of charges that he's sitting there facing. Why face one more? Just get another lawyer. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that Peter's probably going to sit there and want to do something to Martin, which is really stupid and very counterproductive to him getting out of these charges. So this way he can sit there and try to quote unquote be with his daughter. But, plot. So, yeah. Victor kidnaps Valentine. And I'm assuming because, when Valentine was not there, looking into the records of Bailey, Victor probably felt like he was getting too close and he was going to figure out who Bailey really was. So towards the end of the episode, he kidnaps him, stuffs him in the car, and yeah. Now, I don't really understand what his end game is, but it just seemed like it was. At first, it seemed like it was kind of out of the blue, but it also seemed like it was kind of extreme. Like, why not just let him in on you know what? It's a soap opera, and I feel like I'm asking just way too many questions. So, yeah, kidnapping just seems like that makes sense for some odd reason. So, I guess we're doing that. Now, on one hand, it was actually nice to sit there and see Stella. I'm not gonna lie, in the beginning, when Stella first came to town, I could not stand that woman. And she was only barely tolerable when she was with Mike. But after a while, after they really kind of like mellowed her out a little bit more, I started to like her a little bit more. Um, but with that being said, they have a conversation about Marshall, and the only thing that really comes to mind is that in the beginning, Curtis was like, "Yeah, I was not there talking to Marshall, and you practically told me everything." And at this point, Stella's not there sweating bullets, like, "Oh, what did he tell you?" And all he says is about, you know, him being gone because he was dealing with some bunch of shady people, and he wants to sit there and keep his family safe. And most likely, he's sitting there thinking that he's probably in Westside. Now, I'm going to be honest, this conversation goes absolutely nowhere. Um, a couple of uncharacteristics about Stella is that there's one point where, Stella's like, why don't you just sit there and take him at his word and not really sit there and interrogate him? And, Curtis was like, that's a little kind of odd. You've always been a person I want to sit there and try to find the truth and this, that, and the third, and now you're practically sitting there telling me, oh, just take him for his word, and like we're all good. Like, really? Um, which is probably going to be more important down the line because when Curtis figures out that Stella knew more about the story with Marshall than she told him, he's going to be pissed. And then towards the end, um, Marshall shows up. Also, Dante was in this episode, and to be honest, he didn't really seem like he did too much of anything. He talked to Peter, told him that he was probably going to be staying like one more day, whatever, to make sure that they run more tests to make sure that he's good before he goes back to Pentonville. And Laura talked to Peter as well. And to be honest, it didn't really seem like it went anywhere. I think that's probably the issues that I'm having with this episode and why I had to sit there and do this review. I had to sit there and keep redoing this review. This is the third time now. I'm not redoing it again. Um, because I felt like this episode didn't really give you much. I mean, yeah, Valentine got kidnapped by Victor, but I mean, is it really kidnapping? I mean, that's his son. It's not like it's going to be like a huge danger or anything like that. Um, Peter made some sort of offhand remark when they saw Brooklyn and Chase and Bailey. And, Peter was like, looked at the baby and was like, you look just like your mother. Afterwards, after they all left, Brooklyn got paranoid. Because Brooklyn was like, yo, what if he knows? Like, what if he knows that Bailey is really Louise? Like, what are we going to sit there and do? So she seemed like she's starting to freak out. Chase is sitting there trying to calm her down. And, Brooklyn makes an offhand remark like, Peter can never sit there and know. And then Laura comes in and is like, can never know what. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt like that was a little kind of off-putting. I felt like that was a little kind of rude to sit there and just walk in somebody's conversation and be like, so what are you sitting there talking about? Like, really? Not hi, how you doing? Just Peter can't know what. None of your goddamn business. I don't know. It's just for me, like the way she walked up just seemed a little off-putting. And again, to be honest, that conversation didn't really go nowhere. So yeah. Now, two things. One, I feel like that's pretty much I kind of covered the majority of this episode, but I also felt like I'm forgetting some stuff too. I don't know. I felt like this episode was just kind of middle of the road. And this is something that's been bothering me about Jade for a while as far as just the balance on it. They always sit there and give like Sonny and Jason and Carly, some of these really dangerous scenes or some of these really suspenseful scenes. But then you get to episodes like today with like Marshall and Curtis and Stella. And to be honest, didn't really go anywhere, you know? Um, like sometimes I feel like they need to give some of the other characters really more important and more suspenseful kind of stories. And granted, they are doing that with Peter, with the whole Maxie and Bailey and Brooklyn and Chase. And see, this was another thing with Chase and Brooklyn today. I know that they're taking their time with this whole coupling thing, and to be honest, it is kind of nice that they're seeing them together, their banter back and forth, but they're like today's episode, it looked like they were gonna kiss, but then they stop, and then it's just like, oh, what are we doing? You know? I mean, hell, when I actually have more fun watching the Jocelyn versus Esme scenes than I did Brooklyn and Chase, it's like, what are we doing? You know? I don't know. I just feel like something needs to be done with this whole balancing act. And then, as much as I like Sonny and Carly and stuff like that, sometimes we need to get better stories. Um, with some of the other characters because like besides again it just didn't really go too much of anywhere and I felt like this episode was just so blase blah that I felt like I was doing my reviews wrong, which is why this is the third time that I'm actually doing this review because I felt like I wasn't doing my job right. And I realized, well, I'm blaming it on a soap opera. Anyway, I think that's about it for the most part. So, with that being said, I'm going to go. I want to thank everyone for watching. Be safe. Have a great, safe weekend. And I will see you in the next video.